Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Bay on K-Squid, your community radio station for the Central Coast of California. I'm your host, Rachel Ann Goodman. I recently returned from a trip to Dingle, Ireland, a small fishing town right on the edge of the west coast of County Kerry. And I was there with 23 UC Santa Cruz students who are going into their sophomore year and were taking a podcasting class from me. This allowed them to get behind the scenes in this wonderful, touristy, traditional town with all kinds of pubs and lots of traditional music, and interview people, the locals, about various topics that the students themselves got to choose. So here are 6 of those podcasts created by a group of students, each 4 in each group. I think you'll find them entertaining and interesting, and if you're ever in Dingle, you might have a little different perspective on what goes on in this wonderful little town in the west coast of County Kerry. Thanks for listening. This is Talk of the Bay. This first piece is by Charles Lesser, Finley Lindstrom, Naomi Schultz, and Shea Robinson.
The year is 1673, and you sail in a dark, stormy night sea, imagining what lurks below the waves. Maybe there's a sea monster, like the one that just washed up in the harbor. The fisherman at the pub said it had 2 heads, 10 horns, and a body bigger than any horse. You imagine its inky black tendrils rising up to crush the side of your boat.
This kraken was later identified as a giant squid, but other stories from Dingle, this tiny Irish fishing town, aren't as easily explained. For centuries, locals have regaled each other with tales of mermaids, seal people, and sleeping giants. I'm Finley, and these are my fellow hosts.
Charles.
Shea. And Naomi.
This is a UC Santa Cruz study abroad production. Welcome to What's Crackin'.
One of the most famous stories fishermen tell is that of the Selkies, or seal folk, who have the top half of a human and the bottom of a seal. Ciara O'Connell grew up in Dingle, hearing much about these mythical creatures.
They come up onto the shore to play and dance with their sisters, and they shed their seal coats, and essentially one of them gets kidnapped and married and eventually manages to run away back to her family and her sisters that she's missed very much.
Whoa, that's pretty dark. What about the children?
I have also heard of a version where she can't bring them and they have to stay on land. She still appears to them at the beach with tears in her eyes, and that's why seals always look like they're crying.
Tomas, a guide at the Blasket Center, has another story that parallels the Selkie myth, this time about a mermaid.
There was a man long ago, Mikkel. He lived by Smervik Harbour.
He didn't have much going for him, except being a farmer. One early morning,
He went to the beach, and lo and behold, he saw on a rock the most beautiful creature he had ever seen.
a mermaid?
And there she was combing her sea green hair. And it reminded him of butter melting on a plate of cabbage.
It said that if you were able to capture her diving cap, she would go home with you. The only time she had it off, Mikkel grabbed it.
She says, "Man," she says, "do not eat me when you bring me home." "I have no intention of eating you," says Mikkel. So he had pity for her, and he grabbed her hand, and he noticed there was little webs between her fingers, like the foot of a duck. He said, "Will you come home?" She says, I'll come home with you."
Since Mikkel had stolen the cap, she lost the power of the sea. Before leaving, she left a message to her father, King of the Waves. Off they went to get married.
one day, Michael, he was away in Dingle, and the mermaid, she was very house proud, always thinking. So this day, she decided that she'd clean around the fireplace and the chimney breast, and she pulled back the hessian sack, and she pulled out the netting, the fishing tackle and all the nets. And what did she find behind all of that stored? Her diving cap. And she puts it on, and the power of the sea returns to her, and she sees her father's castle, and looking around the house, she sees her 3 kids, and with her sigh, she bids them goodbye, and goes down to Smerwick Harbour, and plunges into the sea. And she's never seen again.
Another myth is used to explain the shape of Inishtusker, one of the Blasket Islands off the Dingle Peninsula. When viewed from the east, the island looks like a person laying on their back. It's nicknamed the Sleeping Giant, and its story has been around for centuries, most recently as a popular children's book displayed in every Dingle bookstore. Nicolette Tillery, who works as the Dingle Aquarium's education director, remembers reading that story to her niece all the time.
The Blaskets are a big kind of, I think, grounding point for a lot of locals as well. People love this place.
Nicolette even has a tattoo of the island. The story goes,
he was stepping on all of the villages and the pubs and the houses and everything. So a druid brewed a potion and put him to sleep, and that's where he is in the sea.
However, Kira told us a much darker version of the tale, one set in the time of the fairies. After all, the island's other name is Anfermarb, the dead man.
He made friends with the fairies, and they invited him to their homeland, Tirnanog, the land of the young. But time there was all mixed up. A day was a year was a day, and a nap would last 700 years. And so he's there and he's whiling away with the time with them, and eventually he's kind of like, oh, I best hit the road, like, you know, get back to the lads, the wife and kids. And they're like, oh, well, sure, we'll give you this horse, but like, just don't get off the horse, whatever you do.
But when the giant returned home, things were different. Everything was smaller than he remembered, and he didn't recognize the landscape. And then
he sees there's been a bit of a rock slide, and there's a young boy trapped under a rock. So he leans down to help take the rock, and he comes off the horse.
So he saves the boy, but something goes wrong. He starts feeling weak.
And he stumbles backward into the ocean, falls, hits his head. And has lain there ever since, waiting for his friends to come wake him up.
That ambiguity over how he fell asleep, whether you believe the children's story or the darker version, is probably why the story still holds weight today.
I'd say that there's a lot of fascination with him, with visitors and children nowadays. Like when my niece comes to visit, she'll, be like, tell me stories about Anfermarv. And so I'll just, kind of make up things. But if you ask her where the waves come from, she says that it's him snoring while he sleeps. So they kind of, take on a little bit of a tale of their own within current day.
Personally, I like to think that the sleeping giant is just waiting patiently to be woken up in Ireland's hour of greatest need. And it's kind of refreshing for an Irish story to leave room for this imagination and hope, which I just love. What do you think, Shea?
I think the myths also have a moral aspect to them. They were used to pass on important messages. Don't take things that aren't yours, don't make enemies of the fairies, and don't kidnap women.
I'll keep that in mind.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. Some locals like Kira say they don't believe in them, but others like Tomas and Nicolette's niece absolutely do.
I noticed that a lot of these stories seem to start as ways to explain natural phenomena. Like the seals looking like they're crying, or the topography of the island.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think, in general, people just take what they need from these stories. They get passed down through generations, and Dingle's really unique relationship to the sea continues.
That's all we have for this episode. Next time you're by the ocean, watch out for one of these fantastical beings. I'm Finley.
I'm Charles.
Shaya.
Naomi. And that's...
What's cracking?
I'm really proud of these students because none of them had ever done radio or podcasting before, except maybe one of my students, so this was all new to most of them. They worked hard on these, and the next one up is about closing the supply chain distance in a place like Ireland. It's all about the dairy industry, and it's produced by Emma Avenia, Nicole Batinich, Riley Ramos, and Lola Sal.
Welcome to our podcast, Cow to Cone. We're going to explore the connection between the cows you see in the fields around Dingle, Ireland, to that luscious ice cream everybody is enjoying, rain or shine.
Ever wonder what makes ice cream in Dingle so creamy? Is it the way the cows live, so happily eating grass, or the short distance their cream has to travel? Or is it some other mysterious ingredient, like love? Elsewhere in the world, dairy production is highly mechanized. What is it about the way dairying is done here that makes the cream so rich? This is
Nicole,
Riley,
Lola, and Emma, and we are here to explore the importance of the traditional dairy industry in rural County Kerry and how it supports the growth of popular ice cream shops like Murphy's.
It's a cold, rainy afternoon. However, there's a crowd of people lined up outside Murphy's, salivating for a scoop of ice cream.
So my favourite flavour of ice cream is the Irish brown bread. We crumble up brown soda bread, cover it in brown sugar, pop it into the oven for 8 hours on a really low heat to caramelise it. So it has a very crunchy texture, but a very sweet flavour.
I got the butterscotch and the Irish strawberry. They're delicious. I can highly recommend.
Murphy's Ice Cream was started by two American brothers as one shop in Dingle and has since expanded to Galway, Dublin, and China. There are even 2 locations in the town of Dingle alone. Clearly, there is something special about this place. The bathroom doors are painted with information about their process and where they get their cream. But what makes this ice cream so appealing? Is it the unique flavors, the friendly staff, or the locally sourced cream they use?
Hi, my name is Kira. I work in Murphy's Ice Cream. I am currently a host advisor. I have been here 3 summers and I work in the Dingle shop mostly, but I also work in the Dublin shop during the winter.
You may be wondering, what's their most popular flavor? Well,
the Dingle sea salt is one of our most popular flavours. We actually gather seawater from a beach local to us, Wine Strand, filter and boil it down, and we add it to our base, which is cream, milk, eggs and sugar. It's very similar to vanilla, but there's actually no vanilla in it, which is surprising to a lot of people. But you can really taste the creaminess of the Kerry cow in the Dingle sea salt specifically.
What really makes this place work is the people.
It's really family friendly. Like, I arrived into the shop and I'm working with my second cousin, and it's just so random because we didn't know it, but a lot of people who come into the company have had connections already in the company, like their parents or their aunties or their cousins. They were already in the company.
so where do the ingredients for all of this luscious ice cream originate? Turns out, not so far away. Soft green acres of open pasture hug the sides of a narrow road on the outskirts of a quaint town called Dingle, Ireland. A herd of cows gather, their hides black and silky with white patches, with the exception of a single red cow. Welcome to Dinny's farm.
I'm Dinny Galvin. I'm 54. I've been farming here since I was 16. It's a mixed farm, dairy and sheep, and we produce milk, sheep meat and wool, and we sell those on to the processor.
He's justifiably proud of his cows and the quality of milk they give.
The best possible milk you can get anywhere in the world comes from dairy cows who are eating grass, not from dairy cows that are indoors, because a lot of it is produced from maize and concentrated feeds and genetically modified feeds.
Grass is the one crop that grows in abundance in County Kerry, an area where the land yields not much else. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows here at Dinny's farm. It's expensive to keep up with the environmental regulations designed to protect waterways.
It's very, very environmental driven now, which is putting pressure on a lot of the smaller guys like me, So if you've got a young family, I'm married, I have 5 kids. My goal in life is to send those girls to college, to uni, like yourselves. But if you have to invest X amount on the farm and you're trying to take care of the family as well, you'd need to be getting a lot more for your product.
Denny feels like he has a big target on his back as a small dairy farmer.
They'd prefer a lot of the smaller guys would get out of the way. Yeah. And they'd prefer to have so many bigger guys, concentrate on it.
With all these added pressures and responsibilities, the future of Denny's farm is uncertain.
I hope somebody will farm something here. It may not be dairy cows, but, I would hate to think it would be sold. Yeah. The farm next door was sold because it was an elderly man that owned it and then he never married, which is sad. We love to see it being handed on. But for a small farm, 50 acres and milking 30 to 40 cows, my son Cathal would not make a living out of that. He would have to double job.
Is keeping it local actually enough to save a farm like this? After all, Murphy's is expanding and the demand for grass-fed dairy is escalating.
Anything you get wrapped up in plastic, and we'll say that milk, that beautiful white milk that's in the tank, that goes to the milk processor. Nutrition is health, and they don't ever believe anybody that tells you any different. As fresh as you can get vegetables, as fresh as you can get milk, and as semi-organic as you can.
So if farmers like Denny were unable to sustain their businesses, what do you think would be lost if local cream was no longer available? Kira from Murphy's has her thoughts.
I think a lot of it is lost. We try to make everything ourselves. If not, we get it locally, which makes us stand out because we use such products where they come from. The taste would be lost, the creaminess would be lost. I think it would be a significant challenge and that we'd lose some customers over it because that's why they come to our ice cream, is for their creaminess.
After speaking to Denny and Kira, we've come to realize how much we take organic and local produce for granted, especially when it comes to supporting the farmers behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we find ourselves enjoying the final product of something without really acknowledging the work that goes into it.
I agree. It's so vital to appreciate and support the people who contribute to satisfying our taste buds and for preserving an industry we all love.
Especially since Murphy's is so good.
You've been listening to Cow to Cone, a podcast about how Murphy's Ice Cream is promoting local dairy by sourcing from local producers and spreading the love back to farms like Denny Galvin's. We hope you've liked what we presented here. Thank you for listening. This has been Nicole,
Riley,
Lola,
and Emma.
If you liked our scoop on Murphy's, maybe you should go get your own.
You are listening to Talk of the Bay on K-Squid, community radio for the Monterey Bay Area. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, and I recently spent 5 weeks in Dingle, Ireland with 23 UC Santa Cruz students, and you're listening to the podcasts they produced during the 5 weeks they were there. This next one is all about what it might be like if you were a bartender in a small town in Ireland. It's produced by Jordan Tejeda, Catherine Rant, Jessica Cortez, and Linda Tang.
Welcome to Dingle, a small town in the southwest corner of Ireland and home to over 50 pubs. We are here for 5 weeks as part of the UC Santa Cruz Study Abroad program. Being able to go into pubs for the first time raised some questions on what it's really like to be a bartender, and encouraged us to explore the intricacies of life on the other side of the bar. This is Jessica,
Jordan,
Am, and Kat, and we're here to give it to you neat on what it's like to be a bartender in one of the most notorious tourist destinations in Ireland. Welcome to the podcast Guilt of the Guinness.
John Benny's pub is located across from the Dingle Pier. Its exterior is painted a deep royal blue, with 3 large windows above the shaded outdoor seating area. Walking through the bright orange front door, you're greeted by the host, Ben, who points you into the direction of the bar. Sitting at the tall seats, you see dozens of alcohol bottles, dollar bills, and police badges taped onto the back wall of the bar.
Imagine a bustling room full of chatter and live music as you sip on your favorite drink to ease you into comfort. That's exactly what a typical night at John Benny's pub is like, if you're on the customer side.
Bartenders perform a graceful dance in constant motion as their quick hands appear to work independently, making your favorite drink while they give advice, tell stories, and lend an ear. Have you ever thought you could be a bartender?
This is good fun while it lasts, but, this isn't forever.
Meet Luke McNamara, a bartender at John Benny's. He dresses like your typical 20-something-year-old, with straight-cut jeans, a black polo tee, and his accessory, an iced latte. His eyes narrow as his smile widens, which happens quite often as he's always cracking jokes. His brown hair lays flat against his forehead from the sweat droplets as he rhythmically dashes from one side of the bar to the next, filling pints with Guinness, ringing up bills, and chatting with the old guy at the end of the bar about the soccer game.
My name is Luke McNamara. I'm a student and bartender.
Luke has been bartending for 6 years, but his bartending career started before he could even legally drink.
I was stuck for cash when I was about 15, so I went down to my local pub and said, can I have a job? And they said yes. So I started 15, just changing kegs, collecting glasses, running the food, doing the odd drink here and there when I really shouldn't have been.
And bartending entails much more than we originally thought.
Luke, could you describe what the job looks like for you?
Serve drinks, you have to do it quickly. And you have to be able to talk to people. On a day-to-day basis, there's at least 300 people coming over the door at John Benny's. And I'd speak to 200 of them, even if it's just hello. So after a summer, let's say that's 1,000 people a week for 10 weeks. You've met 10,000 people in 3 months. So you have to have a base level of knowledge on pretty much everything to hold at least a 30-second conversation, whether it be about sport, politics, religion, what they had to eat in a certain restaurant 7 years ago.
Okay, 10,000 people, 30 seconds each. That's 300,000 seconds of small talk. That's 5,000 minutes. Could you talk about anything for 30 seconds?
Yeah, like what if I asked you about magic mushrooms in Ireland?
Oh my god. I think you're better off asking Steve about that one.
I think bartenders as a whole tend to be chatty people, or are able to, there's an Irish expression, the gift of the gab, where you can just talk about pretty much anything, get away with it.
Luke is currently working 55 to 65 hours a week at John Benny's, with only one day off. Those hours seem crazy. A typical full-time work week is 40 hours. I mean, he must be exhausted.
Feel ancient, I'm 21. Lots of people think it's a great idea until they try and do it, and the workload is just insane. And you're never actually off work, ever. It's more than full-time.
So it's hard work. What about work-life balance?
Trying to balance a social life and a full-time job in hospitality is nigh on impossible. So my day off is a Monday. Most people are off Saturday, Sunday. And then, let's say people are doing stuff on a Friday night. I'm probably working until 1 a.m. You tend to gravitate towards people in the same industry quite often, which you will see. A lot of people who work in one pub will hang out with people who work in a different pub because your all hours kind of merge. It's when you're able to socialise.
The secret to working these long hours?
Caffeine and nicotine. I think it is just the natural stress relief. You just kind of go and relax. And it takes you out of the environment as well, because obviously I can't light up a cigarette behind the bar, which I think it becomes a habit.
So how do you relax once you're off work?
You do take an hour or two to decompress. I kind of just sit at home, eat, scroll through my phone. I really don't speak to anyone. I say hello to my parents and I'll just sit. I just kind of calm, because you spend all day speaking to people. Social battery is dead.
I don't know how he does it. My social battery only lasts for a few hours.
Being around so many people can be draining, especially after dealing with people who've had a little too much to drink.
You've had people screaming and shouting and shouting all sorts of abuse over the other side of the counter, and you have to sit there and go, whatever, leave. Because you can't be responsible for what might happen if they are beyond that point.
So Luke, when they do get to that point, what do?
Cut them off straight away. And people really don't like being told that. I had some guy try and fight me. He's just squaring up. It's like, cause we don't have a bouncer where I work in England at the minute. So he's like, what are you going to do? You don't have a bouncer. What are you going to do about it? You know, and it's just, there's no need. You kind of sit there and be calm and let them get out their system.
Luke also shares how he's considered walking away when he's become too overwhelmed.
So wait, was there ever a time you considered leaving the industry?
Oh God, yeah. I've considered quitting many places. I've never done it. I think anyone in hospitality who says they haven't considered walking at least once is lying. Because some days it is just too stressful. It is just too much.
Even though the job can be strenuous, Luke keeps coming back to work.
What about this job makes him stick with it?
The money, mainly. I need to be able to afford to live.
After all these negatives, you start to wonder, are there any positives that come with bartending?
I like meeting new people, talking to everyone. I do actually like the serving, and also I do secretly enjoy it. I do enjoy the work I do, and I'm good at it.
Now I'm just a bartender, and I don't like my work, but I don't mind the money at all.
After talking with Luke and getting to know a little bit more about what he does for work, would you guys ever consider being a bartender?
I've considered it in the past, but now I'm not so sure.
I think I would do it. As much hard work as it seems like he has a lot of fun doing it, and yeah. I think I would enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. He's always talking to like a lot of different people, and he has a lot of cool stories, and he gets paid a lot of money. So,
Yum.
Do you guys think you learned anything from this experience?
I learned a lot. I definitely have a greater appreciation for service workers, and like since interviewing Luke, sitting at the pub, like I just remember like, oh, the bartender's a human too. Like I gotta treat them as a person.
Yeah, I agree. As a service worker myself, I can definitely understand where he's coming from and understand like the amount of work he does, and it just makes me more empathetic to service workers myself.
Thank you all for listening. This has been Jessica,
Jordan,
Am, and Kat on Guilt of the Guinness with Luke McNamara. Shalante.
I see lots of sad faces and lots of bad cases of folks with their backs to the wall.
Next up is a podcast about sheep. Yes, there are a lot of them in Ireland, and our students were entranced by the opportunity to study them and even hold a baby lamb. So here's a piece called You Heard It Here First by students in my podcasting class. And the students who produce this are Hashna Banerjee Stevens, Maria Moore, Mia Reynolds, and Maya Vanderwall.
To Ireland today.
This is You Heard It Here First. And we are Elena,
Hashna,
Mia, and Maya.
And we are in County Kerry, Ireland, on a UC Santa Cruz study abroad program. We're exploring the culture and economics of sheep farming that support 114,305 sheep in County Kerry.
Those are the sheep at Dinny Galvin's farm. They eye us cautiously as they realize we're not going to feed them. Their cloud-like bodies begin to trot over to the gate the moment they spot Dinny.
So my name is Dingle Galvin. I'm a dairy and sheep farmer. I milk 40 cows and we have 20 sheep. My dad bought a few sheep by accident on the mart and brought them home, and right away I fell in love with the sheep. I just wanted to keep the sheep and have a few baby lambs, and that was it.
And this is Dan. He's a border collie that Dinny uses to herd his cows and sheep. Dan is bringing the sheep in now so we can take a closer look. These sheep have shaggy white coats, curling horns, and faces like Rorschach ink blots.
Dinny introduces us to his sheep, as if he was asking us to meet members of his family. And in a sense, they are.
Everybody's different. Might think alike, but we're all different. So are the sheep. You just got to see them, then that's all.
We were surprised to learn that Dinny doesn't raise these sheep for their wool. In fact, their wool is somewhat of a financial burden to him, rather than a valuable product.
It's not so much about the wool, but It's just that the value isn't added to it. It's a disgrace, yeah. There's one big market in England, Bradford Market. That's where they process and scour all the wool and clean it. So we should be doing that locally here. We have 100 ton of wool comes into a place locally here. And it's just packed into large bales and shipped to Bradford, UK. If we were just scouring that, which is washing it, that would put money back into the farmers' pockets because it's not going halfway around the world to be washed.
Wow. Shipping wool all the way to England? That's a hefty expense. And look around. Most people are wearing synthetic fabrics. Even my sweater is acrylic. Wool just isn't high in demand anymore.
So if wool is such a burden, why raise sheep for wool?
I don't think we're raising sheep for wool anymore, but you got to take it off them. You have to shear a sheep. It's just like getting a haircut.
Ireland has lost 15,000 sheep farms since 1993. Dinny told us what would be lost from Irish culture if this trend continues.
You lose the rural communities. You lose rural people out of the countryside. You're going to lose the school. You're probably going to lose the sports, the GAA. And you're going to lose people in general. People to talk to. You know, that's a big, big thing. Animals will provide you with a certain amount of company, but if you haven't another human being to talk to, it's not a good way to be.
So wait, if these farms are shrinking and they don't raise sheep for wool anymore, why are these shops full of wool products that claim to be locally sourced?
Well, Kerry Woolen Mills is a local shop and wool processing company that is one of only 2 working mills left in Ireland. We talked to the manager of this shop to get a woolmaker's perspective. You walk in the small square building, and a rainbow of colors and textures greet you. Local wool products like hats, blankets, scarves, and yarn flood every shelf, clothes rack, and bin.
My own name is Grania Garnan and I manage Kerry Woolen Mills shop in Dingle. Kerry Woolen Mills is a mill located about 40 kilometres from Dingle itself, and they have been producing wool since the 17th century. The current owners have had it in their family for about 110 years now. The majority of what we source is we would predominantly use Irish wool. Now you do get different textures through the shop purely because we use a mixture of lamb's wool and then the Aran, the adult sheep.
Like Dinny, Grania emphasised the community in the wool industry.
I mean, they're intertwined. All the working mills work together. So even here, we will stock Cushendale, we'll stock Rossin, because they're like us. So the smaller mills, we do support each other. We are small working mills. So yeah, we work very, very closely with them.
She also pointed out changes that she noticed.
It's changing even now. So in recent years, even in the last kind of 5 years, there's a big push on education. Both educating, I suppose, the mills themselves and the farmers. So the price of the sheep fleece is low. That's an argument that, every farmer has. And often it will cost a farmer more to shear the sheep than what they're getting for the fleece. So we are focusing on, I suppose, educating farmers that the better quality fleece is obviously going to produce a higher quality or a higher price. On the flip side of it, there is only 2 working mills left in Ireland doing the full process, so really need a high standard of fleece. So education all around will make a big difference.
We questioned her on what she saw for the future of wool, and she answered to us.
I see Irish wool making a big comeback, to be honest. I mean, there is a major focus on it now, and it's a fantastic raw material. Like, it'll keep you warm, it'll help keep you cool. It's self-cleaning, which is always nice. It's a really long, durable product. And the fact that it's sustainable, renewable, it's kind of a no-brainer. So there is a lot of focus on mattresses, insulation now being used with the Irish wool. There is definitely more to be done with the Irish wool, and I reckon insulation is probably the way to go.
Wait, insulation? Like using it in walls?
Yeah, Dinny mentioned this as well. He was talking to us about his hope for the future of sheep farming.
Try to get something done with the wool. Probably insulation. We need to build a pile of homes. Wool is biodegradable. Synthetic insulation isn't a good thing, because if a house is remodelled or knocked, or that goes back into landfill and the synthetic stuff doesn't break down.
Wool holds the story of a way of life in County Kerry. People here have grown up surrounded by sheep for thousands of years. For some, it's an emotional and tactile connection to family.
As a kid, I remember my grandmother knitting for me. I remember sitting down and being taught how to knit, you were an absolute failure if you couldn't master it. And I see it too. I do it with my own girls. I have them knitting and sewing, and they're using the Irish wool. And I suppose the biggest thing for me is, as a child living in a rural place, you grow up with sheep and you're surrounded by them, and you never have an appreciation for what they give you.
Times are changing. The old way of life is becoming more and more distant. But many sheep farmers in Kerry, like Dinny Galvin, are trying to change with the times in order to keep their traditions alive.
So what is the future of sheep farming in Kerry? No one has a crystal ball, but it likely involves innovation and keeping products local. And you heard it here first. We are Hashna, Mia, Maya, and Elena, and we are with UCSC in Kerry, Ireland. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to Talk of the Bay on K-Squid Community Radio for the Monterey Bay Area. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. The connection between Santa Cruz, California, and Dingle, Ireland goes way back to a time when some musicians decided to go over to Europe and busk for a living and play on the streets of Amsterdam and Copenhagen, and eventually made it over to Dingle, this little town on the west coast of County Kerry. My husband, Steve Coulter, was one of those people, and he ended up making a life there for 10 years, running a recording studio and a concert series. And it was his idea to go back there after becoming a professor at UCSC and take students with him to share the beauty of this area and the music and the culture. And the music is rich there. There's music in every pub every single night, and there's like 52 pubs. These students produced a piece about the intersection between the new artists that are coming up and the traditional singers in that town. Please give it a listen. And this podcast was produced by Aspen Holder, Punya Apal, Rose Meyer, and Oliver Reichenbacker.
Like in loving me, there's happiness you cannot compare. So easy to hold me, and then let me go. So hard to know me.
Hello, my name is Surika, and I go under Segoshef, and I like to play music and I like to drink tea.
Circa looks like a fairy. Her blonde and rose-pink hair is the first thing you see, complemented by a gold septum piercing with a little green gem in the middle. Gold eyeliner wings out from below her eye, dragging upwards and making her irises pop.
Circa was born into a musical family in County Kerry.
I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and we all played instruments when we were kids.
Here, her love for music started. She grew up playing with her family and started taking it up to the next level at a pretty young age.
I used to do this workshop with this guy called Ronan O'Snuddig. Without that, I probably wouldn't have ended up doing what I do now.
Circa's talking about a music workshop she was encouraged to attend, run by renowned Irish musician Ronan O'Snuddig.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and it was my first time learning what it meant to play with a band.
His support encouraged her to stay involved with traditional music as a teen, even if pursuing it was daunting.
I wish I'd never heard it. I wish I'd ran that day.
For many students, going away to college is a catalyst towards a greater journey. Unfortunately, Circa has had a less encouraging experience after leaving her home in Dingle to attend music school in Dublin.
It wasn't about like falling out of love with music itself, but more like my own relationship with like sharing, creating, and like existing in the whole kind of industry is just, it was really daunting, because like I went to music college and that was, they're like, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you're like, oh, but I don't want to do any of that, and they're like, well, then you're never going to be successful, and you're like, yeah, but what if I just was happy? Like,
This is the moment where Circa asks herself, should I keep doing music?
And I was very sad. Yeah, I feel like I lost myself in a way that I couldn't even see at the time.
So Circa returns to Dingle after 5 years in Dublin.
Yeah, I came back down here, and in all the open sessions, people were just like playing music, having a nice sing-song. Like,
to hear the perspective of a traditional Irish musician, we talked to Ailís Kennedy.
Hi, my name is Ailís Kennedy. I live in Dingle, in Ireland, which is a magical country.
With multiple albums and awards, she learned much of her early repertoire from her family and neighbors in rural County Kerry.
Tell us a story about when you felt a deep connection through playing music.
I do recall being on stage in January with my good friend Pauline, and we were singing a song. There was one moment there where we were in the middle of a song and we duetted together, and we just caught each other because she had a very sort of visceral moment that I felt, and we just held hands for a second, and then it passed, and it was more just about us, and there was nobody in the room.
So what do you feel when singing?
Oh, a feeling of comfort, I guess, a feeling of connection.
Here's how Circa describes her experience when playing traditional Irish music.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a real different kettle of fish, like it's all about playing together in sessions, and it's very different to what I do, where, you know, you're really like trying to create this kind of finished piece, whereas in trad music you're like, it's about playing together more, you know.
Picking up the pieces and treating you like Jesus. I was always there, picking up the pieces and treating you like Jesus.
For Circa, her music is connected to the tight-knit community of musicians in her hometown.
Like, I really enjoy talking to people and feeling like we like connect, and we like, I don't know you and now we have something in common, and like that's really cool.
She still has her doubts.
To be honest, sometimes I still like wonder, is this the right thing for me to do? Like, should I keep doing this?
But in these moments, she looks around at Dingle and the people there.
And that's it for them. That's enough. And that like whole way of like community and feeling like, oh, I can just do this too. And then through playing with people and around people, I guess that love just kind of came back in like a really forceful way, but also like being lucky and having people around me who are like, you know, very supportive of it.
지금부터 결란은 지금부터 결란은 더 비슷할까 다시 더 비슷할까 다시 지금부터 결란은 지금부터 결란은 더 비슷할까 다시 더 비슷할까.
I think both of the musicians we've talked to today are brilliant examples of all of the musicians we met here in Dingle in terms of their passion for music and tradition and culture.
Cool how they used the traditional way of learning music and were able to create something new from that.
The contrast between Eilish and Circa, who Circa says is not a traditional Irish musician. She creates her own kind of sound, but to see how tradition still comes through in her music, and then how Eilish, is more intentional because she's an Irish traditional musician, but it's really cool how it still comes through in Circa's, and then Eilish harnesses that more intentionally.
Yeah, and I really think that Circa, what she does is she puts a lot of her own experiences and her own identity into her music, and that's why it's so important for her to hold on to what she's learned through family and tradition while still maintaining her own sort of creativity.
You've been listening to a podcast featuring Circa, a songwriter and singer who draws from her Irish roots to make something wholly new.
And a big thank you to Eilish Kennedy, renowned traditional Irish musician, for tuning in and contributing her story.
We're Punya,
Rose,
Oliver,
and Aspen,
UC Santa Cruz students on a study abroad program in Ireland. Thanks for listening!
And now for our final podcast of the evening. This is produced by Janine Bray, Victoria Ramos, and Elizabeth Terrell. This podcast focuses on the language of Irish and how it is being kept alive through efforts by the government and local people in an area that is mostly Irish-speaking, the west coast of County Kerry. And I think you'll enjoy hearing all the different accents and ways that people have of talking about their beloved Irish language. Enjoy.
Observation of the culture itself and the ideas that only the Irish language can convey.
We're here in the small town of Dingle, County Kerry to be exact. It's in the heart of the Irish-speaking area known as the Gaeltacht, where a higher proportion of people speak Irish regularly than in other parts of the country. This ancient language, estimated to be over 2,500 years old, contains within it culture, ideas, and sounds that are uniquely Irish. We're Elizabeth,
Victoria, and Janine,
students from the UCSC Study Abroad program, and in this podcast we're looking at the past, present, and future of Irish in Ireland.
Welcome to our podcast, A Country Without a Language is a Country Without a Soul. As we investigate bilingualism and the struggle to keep the Irish language alive, we meet a few Dingle locals to give us the lowdown.
The proverb says that Tirgan Tanga is a Tirgan Anam, so a country without a language is a country without a soul. And Bahatanga I Alart, the speaking of the language is the living of it.
That was Shelley Ann, an interpreter from the Blasket Islands. Here's Emma, the 9-year-old daughter of our host here in Dingle, Champagne and Lenka.
What's your favorite Irish word?
I'm not really sure, but gra maybe.
And what does that mean?
Love.
Emma's dad, Sean Paul, also shared some Irish phrases with us, and this one is a tongue twister.
An te hurach tabak dum is tabak age is gan tabak gum. Ni hurn tabak do is tabak gum is gan tabak age. Ach an te na hurach tabak dum is tabak age is gan tabak dum gum. Ni hurn tabak do is tabak age gum is gan tabak age. I suppose it is a bit of a tongue twist, but it goes to the person who gives me tobacco when I don't have tobacco. I would give him tobacco if he didn't and I did. So it's the same thing. Why say something short when you can say it longer in a tongue twister?
Mm-hmm. So it's a proverb about generosity. In a country where people endured hardship and famine, it makes sense that a story encouraging sharing would be popular. The sing-song cadence of this language is also part of what makes it so special.
Sean Paul's wife, Lenka, is Slovakian, so they actually have a trilingual household. And the kids, Emma and Benjamin, will learn a fourth language once they get to their version of high school. But that's a ways away because Benjamin is just 5. Irish is as beautifully sung as it is spoken. Here's Eilish Kennedy singing in Irish.
According to the World Atlas, around 30% of the country's population speaks Irish, but only about 5% routinely use it at home and with their peers.
There's been several political movements trying to revive the Irish language. The Gaelic revival was one of the strongest. In 1966, the fight against the Irish language discrimination began. The revival intended to protect and promote positive attitudes towards Irish and Irish speakers.
So I'm involved in the local Irish language movement with a local Irish plan promoting the language. I take part in amateur drama through the Irish language. A lot of my friends that I went to college with when I was in college, we lived in a house that was just Irish speakers only, from parts of Donegal, Galway and Kerry.
That's our friend Michael O'Callaghan. His English name is Michael Collins. He's an archaeologist from Dingle. He's been part of the movement to preserve Irish for most of his life.
There's another word. Every girl and boy should have it. A skiob, S-G-I-O-B, is a niche that you get on your upper lip just before you drink whiskey.
And why should everyone have that?
Everybody should drink a little whiskey.
And how do you say whiskey?
Ishkabaha.
Ishkabaha.
Ishkabaha is literally the water of life.
Unfortunately, this beautifully musical language is being lost. More and more people are only using English as their primary language, even though Irish is mandatory in schools. Michael gave us his thoughts on how drastic a change it is to lose a language. In fact, the official languages of Ireland are English and Irish.
We realize how fragile it is. You know, I mean, and I know there's many languages in the world with even fewer speakers than there of Irish, but I just think it's an incredible thing to lose a language, not just as a way of communicating with people, but the whole repository of ideas, past and present, are all bound into the language. And for me, it would be unimaginable to lose a language.
Our co-host Victoria grew up speaking Spanish. Here's a few words from her about her native language.
Es triste de pensar que yo pudiera perder el español porque es parte de mi identidad y mi cultura de ser latino.
In Spanish, Victoria tells us what a tragedy it would be to lose her language, especially since it's such an integral part of her identity. Sean Paul, who we spoke to earlier, has a more relaxed attitude towards the multilinguistic state of Ireland and where the language is going.
On an average day in the O'Connor household, I speak Irish to them. If I'm having a private conversation one-to-one, I'll speak Irish and they'll answer me back probably in English 80% of the time. And that's fine. They're going to school in the Irish language. They're living in a place where Irish is spoken. They are able to speak it, even if they don't always speak it back to me. I don't mind. That'll come in time. So I'm not worried about that.
Our friend Michael O'Callaghan feels more unsure about it.
Where do you think the future of Irish is going?
I wish I had an answer for that.
Some people still have hope. Shelly-Ann, the park interpreter from the Blasket Island, gives us some words of encouragement.
So it's a true privilege to be here and to speak and maintain the language and the life of the language and share it with the people that come to visit and hopefully evoke them and inspire them to keep the language going.
There's definitely a poetic quality in the Irish language that can't be replicated.
Yeah, we got to see that through a lot of the native speakers we interviewed.
I agree. It's also uncertain what the future of Irish is, but it seems to be optimistic.
It seems like you're either going to learn it in school or some families will pass it down generationally.
Yeah, like Sean Paul said, it's cool right now to speak Irish amongst the youth, so there's hope in the younger generation to keep the language alive.
We hope there's a future for the language. Here's us giving it our best shot.
Thanks for listening. This has been A Country Without a Language is a Country Without a Soul with
Elizabeth, Victoria,
and Janine.
I'm so proud of these students because none of them had ever produced any radio or podcasts before. They got into my class and bravely forged ahead, learning how to interview people, learning how to use their recorders, learning how to edit and write scripts, learning how to do the voice work. It was a pretty challenging thing in 5 weeks, but they pulled it off, I think, really well. And every year I learn a little bit more about how to convey the art of podcasting to people who have never done it before. It was really fun. And I want to just say thank you to all the students for being such willing participants in this global education course abroad in Dingle, Ireland for 5 weeks. I also would like to thank Sean, Paul, and Linka, our hosts there in Dingle, Ireland, who made it possible for us to teach and presented us with some amazing adventures, hill walking and holding baby lambs and going to places I would never have gone before. I'd also like to thank Manel Camps, the provost at UC Santa Cruz, for believing in our ability to take these students over there and engage them both in the culture and music, but also in the art of podcasting and writing while they were there. And thank you for listening and supporting community radio. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
I wish I was on yonder hill, 'tis there I'd sit and cry my fill, until every tear would turn a mill. He's good to a warning slam. Shularun shugo sakirag shugo kyun shugo darasag selilam isko to a warning slam. I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel to buy my love a sword of steel. Is good to a warning slam. Shularun shugo sakirag shugo kyun shugo darasag selilam isko to a warning slam. I'll dye my petticoats, I'll dye them red, and round the world I'll beg my bread, until my parents shall wish me dead. Isko